So we are here at the Pen Parentis Literary Salon for January 2020. Wow, it's a really big number. Thank you for coming. It is a winter poetry salon. We do this once a year in January. So the Pen Parentis Literary Salons are a monthly literary salon. We're always on the second Tuesday of the month. You can always come back, even if you miss 3. Even if you just come every month and then miss 1, you can still come back. Nobody will, we love you. We want you to come. We always have really interesting readers. Everybody that we present on this stage is an established writer of some kind or an emerging writer with great promise. Most of them have won awards. Most of them have won major awards, actually. And all of them have kids. So what Pen Parentis does is we're a nonprofit that provides resources to writers to help them stay on creative track after they start a family. So one of the things that we do is we try to inspire you by presenting human beings who have actually accomplished this immense task. They have actually formed a creative career and had a family. So we're not either or at all. My name is Milda DeVoe. I write under DeVoe. Yes, there is a website and a Twitter handle and an Instagram handle. Never mind. But what are you? I write short stories. I'm working on a book, and I'm a friend of Kristen's. And we have been in existence as a nonprofit since 2014. We have started our salon. Our salons began in 2009. Our fellowship began in 2010. Just keep a lookout if any of you do have children under 10. We do present an annual fellowship which awards $1,000 and a chance to read and publication to a single author, talent-based, completely blind judging, and that's what happens. And it's really cool. And then they throw it, and that's it. So that's in March. Also, if you go to AWP, we will be there. AWP is a monstrously large literary convention. This year it's in San Antonio, so we will be doing a writer-parent meetup, and that's mostly for you guys on the internet, because we like to meet you in person, so, come. I don't have much to say. Oh, yes, I do. So I want to thank, first of all, LMHQ for this space. It's a very cool space, and it makes us feel cooler. Yeah. And we love that. But I also want to thank Salon for sponsoring the food and wine.
Thank you.
Yay. They are an app. Croissant is an app, which I actually have on my phone. This is like, and also I'm the president now. I actually don't have anything to do with Croissant except I happen to have it on my phone. And it's a very cool app, particularly for writers, because it lets you, on demand, find space. So if your kid is crying, the babysitter's there with the kid, and you don't have anywhere to go, and the coffee shop is too annoying, you can just, look up where's the closest space and get it for, an hour work and then leave. There's no commitment except for the monthly fee to just have the app. But today, because they're here, there is a discount of $20 off of the first month and a free week if you just want to try it out. And it's pretty cool. Also, there's a raffle. So we're going to take an intermission after we get tired, and then you can all run over and sign up for the raffle, and then we'll draw the raffle. And the raffle is for a month free, right? 1 month, for an entire month of office space on demand. What?
40 hours.
40 hours. So you cannot live there. Unless you live really, really large, fast. Anyway, I'm in a goofy mood today. I don't know why. I'm sorry. Put up with me. But let's talk poets, and let's bring up, so Christina Chiu is our curator, and she is going to introduce the poets.
The wonderful thing about poetry is that it is so, I once read and I interviewed this writer named Len Lawson, and I said, so, what do you think about fiction writing? Would you ever write fiction? He's like, hell no. He literally was like, fiction people are terrible people. They're terrible. Because they don't know how to stop, you know, and they're not careful with their words, and there's so much truth to that. I think with poets, some of the poets that you're going to see tonight, that you'll get exposed to all the different kinds of and voices that are out here right now, and really be able to appreciate poetry today. Sarah Kain Gutowski is going to be our first reader. She is such a great advocate for Pin Parenthesis. She's awesome. We love her. She's the author of Fabulous Beast poems, selected as runner-up for the 2018 X.J. Kennedy Prize, and Fabulous Beast, the Sow, a chapbook. Her writing has been published in the Three Penny Review, So to Speak, a feminist journal of language and art, Painted Bride Quarterly, the Gettysburg Review, Verse Daily, and the Southern Review. As a professor of English at Suffolk County Community College, she has co-chaired the annual SCCC Creative Writing Festival for over a decade. So everyone, please welcome Sarah.
Telling my daughter I felt like I was going to the prom. And I also told several of my friends. So I just want to thank Christine and Milda. Where'd you go? Here. Here you are. Hi. Again, for inviting me to read at Pen Apprentice. The last time I read here, we were in the Andes Hotel, and I just had a chapbook of poems published by Hyacinth Press, and chapbooks are handmade books, and I was so proud of it. I am still so proud of it, but I was just surfacing from like a baby fog. I had a 2-year-old, and so my brain and I felt like my body were just becoming mine again. And most of the poems that were in that chapbook I read at that reading are in the first section, so I'm just going to read 2 of them right now. This is my first book. It works as a collection of fable, fairy tale, and myth. So, the stories our mothers teach us. When I was your size and just weaned, the sow tells her piglet, I found a hole in our pen and squeezed my small, round body through. At first, no one missed me. I ran across the farmer's fields, slipped into a ditch filled with nettle and wire, and then climbed out, skin and snout torn. Between the edge of the field and that stinging, tearing abyss, I sat, panting at the sky. All the stars tapped and telegraphed shiny, tinny warnings, but I refused to listen. The night wind smelled sharp with burning wood and honeysuckle, and I had to follow the scent. That was the day I fell in love with blindness and the strange way that scent and even stench can comfort us. But I was found, and now I have scars. May I go into the woods one day, her piglet asks. It is my duty to deny, the sow says. Your duty is to listen, and then dig and dig under fences at night. This is the stories our mothers use against us. When you were small, the sow begins, I brought you to a patch of dirt, dry and cool under the crabapple tree. All around us, she tells her piglets, the little birds fluttered and covered their hot wings with the dust. I rooted around the tree's trunk and found knotted grubs and rocky fruit for our lunch while you all lay down, little bellies flat against the ground, and closed your eyes. And each one of you claimed you felt the world spinning. Eventually, I ceased my efforts to feed your 12 hungry mouths, and I lay my dry body in the dust too, where I imagined I had wings to cover with dirt, that I was pinned to the whirligig earth, not by the fact of my flesh and bone, but by choice. So the second part of the collection is a fairy tale, and it is concerned also with choice and about coming to terms with the choices that we make, like acknowledging how much we're responsible for the turns that our life takes, because especially as a young parent, when I had first had my child, I felt like very much the victim, even though I had very much put myself there in wanting this child. And she was particularly strong-willed, so it was like this battle. And there are a lot of times as a parent where I'm sure you know, like you just squelch the little voice that you have because this life is more important. So the second section is a long poem written in chapters, and it's called The Woman with the Frog Tongue. It's very weird. But as fairy tales are, this young woman is born with a voice that sounds like birds chirping and insect chatter, and she gets unhappy because nobody understands her. She goes off into the woods, and she finds somebody who can turn her tongue into this frog tongue, right? She wants a cure, and he says, I'll change it for you, and he changes it into something horrific. So about kind of like coming to terms with it. And one of the things, because the fairy tale's so long, so I'm giving you the background, because I'm not going to read this all to you, but as I was writing it, I would write it in these chapters, and then I would read the chapters to my daughter, and she's about 5 or 6 at the time. And in hindsight, maybe it was a bit horrific, and I shouldn't have done that. She would come up with these questions. She would ask me questions, and usually they were not about the horrific things. They were about things like language. So these 2 poems that I'll read you from it are, the titles come from her questions, and they are my answers, which are, of course, indirect, as a lot of poems are. Mama, what is regret? She misses her voice and its insect ring. The tower's emptiness tolls waves of quiet to the point where even her thoughts are mute, and a series of pictures, not sounds, moves through her head. The world moves around her. Every tossed tree limb, every detached cobweb, whatever the wind shifts, speaks, and it says to her, you were once this light, this movable. When she wakes from restless dreams and the stitches strain between her lips, she feels more fully the reach of her silence. She cannot even click or tisk her tongue in shame. She has never felt so clumsy, so burdened and ungainly. When she spoke with the black crickets creak and whistle, she knew someone somewhere understood her, no matter if he was very small and very slight and likely to be crushed between animal jaws or flattened under a human foot. Even in her tower room, lying unencumbered on her bed, she sympathizes. She feels it looming in the air above her, the force of that sudden, obliterating weight. Mama, how does the woman with the frog tongue eat? The regret she feels turns to rage, and with it the tenor of her dreams changes too. Now she is a giant wave, an accumulation, a wet mouth screaming toward the shore. She wants to devour it all. Beaches, trees, and grassy dunes, they disappear beneath her massive overbite. Small towns, long roads, the suburbs of cities, and then the cities themselves. She feeds the river and lake beds like a mother bird who has chewed and digested food for her young, and then they rise up too to devour the land and its inhabitants. And then she is no longer water, but a whale within it, the detritus from felled and sea-scrubbed civilizations collecting in her spiny teeth. She eats and eats, less to be full, more to destroy. When she wakes, her jaw aches in the place where her molars ground together, and her hunger is nothing but a nightmare, in daylight, less frightening, and gone. And so the last poems of the book are wrapped up in myth. I was also reading Delaire's Greek myths and Norse myths with my daughter, and they have these absolutely beautiful pictures. And I mean, The prose is really beautiful too, but the pictures were really engaging, and the thing that kind of captured my imagination while I was reading to her. And she was asking about like why we read mythology, and I was explaining how we use it to explain the phenomena in our lives, and I started using them to explain the phenomena in my life. And this is just about the many temptations that like artists feel. A woman tempted, but still they had to pass through dangerous and bewitched waters. 1. I lashed myself to the mast. The siren sings, and I would hear his light and sinewy notes. The knot is meant to restrain. I need the knot because it keeps me safe. The air may shift between the coils wrapped around me, but the hitch is complex. It tightens when I move. My faithless hands deny this undertaking. They chafe the rope, and the knot frays, but holds. 2. We pass the island where dead women lie open-mouthed as if struck mid-aria. Around them stretch the bodies of their children, small, stiff arms and legs arranged at their sides as if they were planks of wood to walk across. By them we know the measure and the cost of the siren's exquisite song. The husband's entrails loop the shore like seaweed in red foam. 3. Oh, my husband, you are both seducer and faithful spouse, the one who urges me to danger and then waits for me at home. You know the risk, and yet you chant and praise until I cannot fail this course I steer toward. The siren's melody is just as brash and full of adulation. You and he are brothers in this art. 4. I cannot trust that I will pass this test. I hear his song and parts of me respond. He sings of lands I lived in long ago. He sings a language I thought I had forgotten. He reminds me of past glories like stars I used to follow when skies were dark and clear. That voice would ravish me like splintered teeth, each note and word delivered by that note tear wounds that will not close. They are that deep. I want to lay my body down and bleed among the calcified remains. No thought for what and who and why it will all end. And 5. But then the seas change and I drift away, far from the operatic voice that churned the smaller sea within me. The drama ends. The ropes go slack, and I can move about. Most days I float unfettered in the ocean, buoyed by silken waves that lap my skin because there is no ship or boat or voice. You float there too, our bodies side by side, like driftwood loosed on changeable water. That's it. Thank you.
Sarah, is that whole fairy tale in iambic pentameter? Mostly? Wow. That's great. While I walk this over to Christina and get mine working, that's okay, I got you. I wanted to ask you all, you clearly, Sarah, have explicitly used inspiration from your child into your work. Has everybody had that experience of something their kid said or did or done? Have you had inspiration directly connected to the fact that you have a kid? You start, Timothy,
Yes.
and go down, and I'm going to hand this to Christina. And hopefully it won't whine.
Yes. And you?
No, talk about it a little bit. Just
Oh, really? Talk about it? Well, one of the poems that I'm going to read, I decided it would be appropriate for me to read a poem in which I do actually include an event from my life that involved my older daughter. So I will read that poem soon. Yeah. And I've done it several times.
This is Timothy John.
Yeah, sorry.
This is Len Lawson.
Yes. Like Tim said, what I was going to read today reflects that as well. But it's more so been like, I guess, bad therapy rather than just me trying to like, make it into something great, you know. So I'll let you be the judge. So.
This is Nancy.
Yes, hi. I think that my daughter definitely figures in my poems. Many in general, the people I live with are people that I'm close to figure in the homes. So I wouldn't say everybody has different consciousnesses and different places they are in their lives. So I think all of the people that I know somehow come through poetry.
Well, our next reader is Len Lawson. Len is all the way up here from South Carolina. Everyone, isn't that incredible? I can't believe we're so lucky. So Len Lawson is the author of Chime, The Chap Before the Night Wakes You, and co-editor of Hand in Hand, Poets Respond to Race. His poetry has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and Best of Net. He has received fellowships from Callaloo, Vermont Studio Center, Virginia Center for the Creative Arts, Weymouth Center for the Arts, and a scholarship from Emrys Foundation. His poetry appears or is forthcoming in Callaloo Journal, African American Review, Ninth Letter, Verse Daily, Mississippi Review, and elsewhere. Len is also a PhD student in English Literature and Criticism at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Everyone, please welcome Len.
Good evening again. Thank you all for having me. I appreciate it. There should be some kind of door prize for like the person that comes from the farthest away. So I'm still waiting for that.
It's
no.
mine and it's over there.
No, I'm happy to be here. When I get a chance to come up here, it's really special to me because it doesn't happen very often. So I'm going to read 3 poems. Sorry if they are a bit long, but like I said, I don't try to turn my poetry to writing about my children, but when I do, it just kind of comes out so the way it will. So we'll see what happens. This first one is about rock band. Raise your hand if you know what that is, or if you've heard of it. Okay.
Like an actual rock band.
Oh, I'm sorry. I should have prefaced it. Okay, the game rock band. Okay, more hands. Good. All right. Used to be popular about 10 years ago, so that's where this came from. This is a praise poem. Praise song for rock band. Praise for 4 children in a cramped room of a double-wide trailer, banging drumsticks on a toy drum set, fighting over who gets to beat them next. Praise for tour mode, hours of playing an endless set, alternating microphone, guitar, bass, and drums, taking breaks only to eat lunch. Praise for a brother or sister to bail you out of a jam when you can't catch your notes or drum beats. Praise for a 5-star performance, better than an A on a pop quiz. The light in those little eyes blazes the soul of a divorced father, creating memories with kids he sees once a month and never again in person when they're older. Praise for the punk rock playlist. Praise for downloading it to play on 2-hour car rides home from the visitation pickup. Praise for Blitzkrieg Bop on repeat and punching the sky to, hey, ho, let's go. Praise for singing la-las over unknown lyrics to Smells Like Teen Spirit. Praise for air drumming to maps, screaming the lyrics of all at the top of their bottomless lungs, never knowing what they're really singing, knowing that their parts form the whole of a family. Praise for punk rock, making them inseparable. Praise to their lifelong band. Praise to their dad, whom they will forget, ushered them to this bond. Praise for these locked and sealed memories under layers of puberty and regret. Praise for the reunion tour that may never come. So I have 4 children, as I told somebody earlier, believe it or not. The 2 oldest are in college. The 3rd is in high school. The 4th is about to enter high school. My oldest is avid basketball fan, in love with Kobe Bryant. So this is one I wrote related to that. Lesson from the bottoms. You left your basketball shorts at my place after one of our monthly visits. You wore them every day you were here. I tried them on today. Quite fit. I was a mediocre backyard baller at best. Too much fear even to try out for the school team. Always chosen last in pickup. Nobody wants to look at a teammate with brass rim glasses, sniffling from seasonal allergies. As other boys would fly above my head to dunk, I would quip, "Incoming!" Until one time the leader of my team slapped me senseless in anger. "Are you going to play or be a goddamn cheerleader?" It took everything within me not to cry. I was playing only to my strengths of wit and sarcasm, which unfortunately did not translate on the court. Other men had to teach you the game. Another man in the master bedroom of your new home. Other coaches, other players, non-dads, non-me. I smell the sweat of these shorts and think how disciplined a shooter you are. You shoot, you score, you shoot again, you score again. You shoot, you miss, you shoot again, you score. The night I came to your school basketball game, I marveled. You were not only a shooter, you were a teammate. You distributed the ball diplomatically. You did not even have to use a sharp tongue to insert yourself into the game. You just played superbly. It took everything within me not to cry. Ours is a different scenario from that of Dell and Stephen Curry. I imagine you wish we were there. A seasoned NBA player who could pass the torch of greatness down to his wonder kid. And when you shoot the ball from the three-point line at the end of the game with 3 seconds left and score, you look for me in the stands, my fists to the sky like cannons, ready to salute you. No, I'm not great. I'm me, hapless, mediocre, on the bench in life, reserved for when others get tired. Then I go in and run around on the court to look diligent, passing up shots to others, wiping the soles of my sneakers and blowing on my hands to appear professional, clapping for the ball from teammates, never to shoot, still for fear of being exposed. I'm sure Dell is more than proud of his basketball sons, a blessed man. Beautiful how the whole Curry family is on the same team. In these shorts today, I am your Dell. No, I am your dad. You don't have to be Steph for me to fire bombs into the air when you play. No, when you live. You are the man I want to be. I want to buy your jersey in real life. I already have half your uniform. It's taking everything in me not to clean these bottoms. And are we one more? I actually read this in front of them a few years ago and got mixed reaction. Kids and poetry seldom mix, so it is what it is. The words you should hear. 1. You are a man. You are everything I wish I could be. Your life is before you. You don't need to know where it goes. Your feet will sanctify every path you tread. You are taller than me. Your arms stretch beyond my imagination. You are the best brother to your siblings I have ever seen. You are the son parents pray for. You are God's answer to the confounding question of my beleaguered existence. You are the reason I wanted to be a husband. You deserved a stable home that I failed to provide. You fell from a high chair once because of my negligence. You are my tears of regret for my own cracked and broken places. You will be great at anything you touch. You don't need a basketball to assert your worth. You don't need the prom to be king. Your love interests will come and go, but your value is within you. 2. You are a woman. Your beauty mirrors only the beauty within you. You are strong inside. Your natural ability to do anything you wish gives me hope that you can conquer worlds. You can see me in the mirror every day. You can blame me if it upsets you. Your hair is yours to do what you will. You do not have to make it straight. Your curls are your connection to God's perfection. You cried so much as a baby. You cried so much that I screamed back. You grew up to see your parents become children while arguing. You have your reasons for not wanting to speak to me. You have my heart because you are the first daughter I put into the world. You don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to make everything perfect around you. Your tenacity can heal many hurts. Your voice is a song that can heal. You can share it with me anytime. 3. You are your father with the volume turned up. You are my conscience on high adrenaline. You possess every quality of me I wish I learned to harness early in life. Your intelligence amazes many. Your gifts are your playground. Your passion for reading and writing affirms me. Your heart shines through a kaleidoscope of abilities and emotions. You deserve a yes for everything you desire. You deserve a dad whom you can see more often, who understands all of you, because I am you and you are me. You don't have to be afraid of showing love because men can do so without shame. You, on my last day in our old home, ran down the street after your older brother and sister were already in the car riding away. Your little sister and I remained inside not knowing you escaped, and you were caught between the stupidity of two parents who knew better than to let you make a choice between staying or going. You did not witness me carried away in handcuffs by police who were told I abused you and your siblings. You were never touched or harmed. You all were the ransom I paid to leave that house. Your anger should never be your downfall. You must learn better ways to express it in healthier ways than I could. You still have me alive today. You can learn much from me because I have much to share. You don't have to feel inferior to any of your siblings. Your uniqueness is a light that many will covet, as I do now. 4. You have so much life to give, and you live it through the eyes of your other siblings. Your heart is open, your eyes are wide. You miss nothing that happens within your radius. You are your own girl. You want to be a doctor. You can heal with your hands and your words. You wanted to know what I do when you are not around me. You wanted to know how I spend money. You wanted to know which of you my favorite is. You ask all the right questions. You should not stop until you get the answers. You don't know how much I regret not being there to answer, nor being there to see you grow day by day. You will grow into a beautiful woman. You will have a mind full of answers. Your answers will fill the minds of many one day. You and your siblings are the answer to my atonement for my wrongs. You are the answer that I got right. 5. I always enjoyed the beginning of our car rides from Andrews when you all were so excited about sharing your lives with me from the previous weeks. I never wanted to speak because I was overwhelmed with love that you four wanted your dad to be a part of your lives when we were apart. I wanted more, so I came to your schools. I came to your games. I came to your dance recitals. I came to your new home. I felt like you wanted me to live there. I would have stayed if you asked me to. I would do anything you asked. I'm desperate to be your dad again. I need you and love you. I wish I didn't have to write these words and I could simply say them into your gorgeous faces. I've imprisoned myself behind walls of silence because the pain of being rejected by any of you is too great. I always wanted to be a part of your lives even though our family changed when I left. I left so that you would not have to see war in your own home. I know you are better for it. I know your lives will always be secure. I pray for you always. I see us all talking and writing these words in a living room or a restaurant. I want to tell you my passion for writing, the places it has taken me, and the people I have touched. I teach students year after year who seek comfort and care in me that they don't receive enough of in their own settings. I wish it were you in those desks receiving my heart poured out in each lesson. No, I wish it were you at a home with me that I could provide well for. I wish we had more movie nights and nights out like before. I wish we could sing and dance and play games again. I love that you always remembered our good times. I dream of making more. We are blood. We are one. We. Thank you.
So what I noticed just from the first two readers was how you brought us into your, it was like we were there in your home, like hearing a bedtime story at the basketball court. You know, it's like when you sit down to write, like I think fiction writers work really differently, right? We come up with scenes. Do you come up with which part do you come up with first? The scene? Is it an emotion? Is it, what sparks your poetry?
I think with those that I just read, it's more like the memory starts first, and then trying to like build around that, like what the poem wants to be. Because you know, I can just like write what happens in, you know, in the past, like in real life, or I can try to make it more creative, but ultimately I believe poems are organic and they want to become what they want to become, so we just have to be discerning enough to figure it out, or patient enough for it to become what it wants to be. So I kind of just wait for it, and I guess with those that I read just now, I guess they have different forms like on paper, but to me it's just things that happen in my life. So it just, the root of it is really just what I can remember in detail.
Then were you a poet before? Like how long have you been working on poetry?
Well, I started writing poetry like probably in 3rd grade.
Nice.
So I didn't accept the calling, I guess, of poetry until I was, you know, well after they were born. So
I was thinking about that. Like when in your family life did you start turning to poetry?
yeah, up until then, you know, my undergrad is in business, so I was like, I gotta leave this small town and get away from it so I can make money. So I had a high school teacher that told me, you know, you're gonna be a teacher and a writer someday. And I was like, you know, okay, never gonna happen. So stop spreading lies. But lo and behold, it did. So she was able to see it before I could. But that's something too that, not to stray too far off topic, but that I sort of struggled with in the beginning was, you know, how do you make this into a profession? And not having any like model to go by, or having to find the model, or find people that are doing what, you know, in real life, what I've only imagined happening. So it took a long time for me to figure that out. So you know, it was really just something that I played around with up until I guess I got serious.
Yeah. So what was the impetus for getting serious?
Failing at everything else. So
It's a theme here.
pretty much. Yeah, I took a job in business, and I just got burned out from it to the point where it's, you know, I knew that's not the way I wanted to spend the rest of my life. So it was like going back to square one, trying to figure out, you know, what I want to do with the rest of my life. And then I remember what that teacher said, and then I was like, okay, let's just start here, and then, you know, the rest is history.
And how did the residencies figure into your development as a poet?
Oh, they were great. I mean, coming up, these are like, the questions you're asking are like things that I think about all the time.
It's what I do.
Like, you know, a gift. I didn't know this was gonna happen. But just the actual leaving where I live and coming to different places and meeting different writers is, to me, enough. It's not necessarily, I mean, when I go to residency, of course, I have a plan in mind, but then just to see other people and meeting other people that have the same passion for what I do, and living outside of where I live is like something that, you know, I always, you know, come back home with and say, well, you know, I don't necessarily have to be be in this place where writing or the arts is not really, you know, glorified as much as in other places. So that gives me a lot of encouragement.
We're happy to encourage you.
So actually, Sarah was talking about something before we started that is really interesting because just as she was about to board the train to come here, she gets a call from the school that her daughter might need to go to the ER because she's got like a hearing. And I, as a parent, I always feel like whenever I was about to like settle in and actually do something for myself and work or go out to do like adult things, something like that always happened. What made you stay focused? So why don't we start with Sarah since she brought it up.
Desperation. I mean, really, we spoke about doing this reading a year ago, and I was like, a whole freaking year, dude. And then today we get the ear infection. So I also remembered, I was like, ooh, guess what? I have eardrops for the ear infection you had back in August. So we are going to double dose that tonight, and then we are going to take you to the doctor in the morning. So I'm mother of the year.
Clearly.
But like, I mean, that's kind of the way, honestly, like her, because my daughter too, I got her from school, and she's like, well, when I press here, it hurts. When I go like that, it doesn't. Oh, thank you, nurse, for calling me and getting me to run over and get her from the school. So, I don't know, it's a lot of, it's remembering that like, the things that I've committed to in my professional life are important too. So what can I do to triage both? I mean, if she was bleeding out, of course I would have canceled. Maybe. And most of this too is because I was, 5 minutes from my daughter's school and my husband was 40 minutes across the island. So he wasn't going to be able to get there quickly. Like I had to be the one who did the work. But I don't know how many, like, everybody here has this too, but I'm a writer and I'm an academic and I'm a parent, and those feel like 3 different selves and 3 different roles I have to do, and they're all conflicting. And then, my poor husband, he's like, spouse. And so there's like, you're doing all these things, and like, how do these things manage, and how do you keep them from like, killing one another, really? Because they're all fighting for priority. So it's really like, I had to, when I picked her up from school, I was like, all right, so I gotta get the kids, see what's up with her, and then she's like, I push here, and it doesn't. I was like, okay, you're good. We're gonna give you some meds, and I'll take you to the doctor in the morning, and we'll see how it goes. Like, she wasn't screaming in pain. But I was kind of like, a whole year, we'd had this scheduled. Here it was, the day of, and she gets an ear infection, so that's just
Nancy, do you how do you stay focused?
Well, so I would say that I don't do very well staying focused. Today is my 67th birthday.
So gonna sing to her. We are so gonna sing to you later.
Oh, good. Okay, I need that. But I think that for me, writing has been a solace for myself, but it's been very hard for me to not to come to it as a profession, or to come to it in a real serious way, because most of the other fires in my life, it's sort of like I can do one thing at a time, and so I've had a really hard time with that. Maybe if I had known about Pen Parentis, or you had been around when I was younger and my daughter was young, and that would have been different. And then the other thing that happened with me is I also went into academia, wrote a dissertation, got very involved in that whole world, and that was enough. Plus being a wife and a mother, like I didn't really feel like I had a lot of time to write, because it wasn't that I didn't have time, but it felt like it's hard to let go of all those other things and get into the right head, which is that kind of a head where you don't know what's going to happen and you're not in control. And so now I'm to explore that world. So, yeah.
With staying focused,
I guess I'm in a situation now where I didn't really, well, like I was saying earlier, I didn't really see myself as this person while my kids were younger. So, on being on the other side of them, being more mature, I guess, this is like, I guess my fifth child. Because, you know, if this is something that is not nurtured, you know, if writing is the passion that we say it is, then it's going to have to be cultivated, you know, or else it's going to die, you know. Dream deferred comes to mind, you know. So it's something that, you know, I give priority.
You need to verbalize?
Oh, no. It's got to be, you know, preserved, I think, so that, you know, it doesn't, you know, fall by the wayside, I think, to me. And lately I've been reading a lot, like for my doctoral program, some Gary Stevens, who's been saying things like, you know, academics and will take you away from your passion. I'm like, you are preaching to me. You know, so it's like all these things are trying to take you away from what you really want to do, I guess, which is the writing or being in a place where you can just put something down. So I guess I've to, you know, improvised over the years and gotten smarter, whereas, you know, just like letting things, you know, happen patiently. Like it may not be a whole poem, it may just be like a line that I can come back to later. What Lucille Clifton said in an interview comes back to mind, where she was asked, you know, she had like 6 children, and she was asked, how did you ever write all those poems when you had so many kids? And she said, well, I just wrote shorter poems. I didn't stop writing, I just wrote shorter. So, you know, you just have to treat, I mean, I really see right now, as I've been listening, it's like treating it like another child, you know, that you have to, you know, nurture. Otherwise, you know, you wouldn't let your own child just be left to, you know, die, or, you know, left to be unclothed out in the world, or go outside in the cold without a coat on or something like that. So it's something that we have to preserve, I think.
And I'm an insomniac, so a lot of my focusing on my work would happen between midnight and 4 in the morning, for the most part. And the other thing is, I do think it's important for us to, you know, as Len was saying, not having models, I'm guessing like a model poet to sort of like teach you how to go about doing that. I didn't have one either, and not having models of in the arts or in academia. I think it's important to demonstrate to our kids that while they are our primary concern, that we want to succeed at what we do too, and show them what that looks like, you know, and that sort of we have to sort of triage things and put things in perspective. And if it hurts when they touch their ear, tell them to stop touching their ear, you know, and so forth. But really, for me, it's been the insomnia that has helped me out. Yeah. And you know, for the most part, the way that we divvy up the distribution of labor in the household is that my wife does most of the morning related things, you know, like getting them off to school, and the other, so I can sleep in a little bit late.
Oh.
Yeah. And they're 10 and 14 at this point too, so they're a bit easier. Oh no, 14 is hard again. But 10's great. Taurus, who's 10 years old, is very stable and reliable. But yeah.
10, they still think you're Superman.
They still think you're Superman. They still just want a hot meal, you know, and to, you know, hang out in their underwear on the weekends watching TV, which is great.
Okay, our next reader. Did you want to take a break for that, or did you want to just?
Do you have time to stay a little bit longer? Yeah? Okay, let's do some more readings.
Yeah, okay, great, perfect.
So, Timothy Donnelly, oops, I have 2 mics here, has an extremely long bio. And it's so awesome that I couldn't even edit it down. I was like, oh my God, this guy is ridiculous. And then I met him and I'm like, oh, he's so nice.
And all the ways.
So Timothy Donnelly is the author of 27 props for production of Ein Lebenszeit. The Cloud Corporation, of course he didn't help me out.
No.
You notice that? He didn't help. The Cloud Corporation, and most recently, The Problem of Many. With John Ashbery and Jeffrey G. O'Brien, he's the co-author of 3 poets, and his chapbook, Hymn of Life, was published in 2014. His poems have appeared in American Poetry Review, The New Yorker, The Nation, The New Republic, The Paris Review, Poetry London, and elsewhere, as well as in the Best American Poetry and Pushcart Prize anthologies. Donnelly is a recipient of a Columbia Distinguished Faculty Award, the Poetry Society of America's Alice Faye de Castagnola Award, and Paris Review's Bernard F. Connors Prize, as well as fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation, the Lannan Foundation, and New York State's Writer Institute. He's Director of Poetry at the Writing Program of Columbia University's School of the Arts. Everyone, please welcome Timothy.
Thank you. Speaking of models.
Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you, Milda. And thank you to my co-readers. It's an honor to read with you and to be here tonight. I think I'll read 5 poems. The first 3 will come from my most recent book, The Problem of the Many. The first is called Stunt, and I was talking with friends before the reading tonight about the troubling movie Joker, and it's an origin story, right? And I think of this poem as my origin story. Stunt. Early on in the undertaking, I imagined backing out of it. This allowed me to continue outwardly while inwardly I had stopped. Not to make too much of it, but everything followed accordingly. The human, in my experience, will speak until you agree. Agree, or it will lean too close and bring its hands. Protect what refuses by corrupting it into something scarce. I don't want to ruin it, but in reality, there's no choice. I agree about the weather. I agree to the human voice and its red declamation. But when what punishes has penned itself in sleep, I reduce what words it uses into a toxin I can sing. Here's the poem that has my daughter in it. It's called, I have a number of them, but here's the one I'll be reading tonight. It's called All Through the War, and I wrote this poem in June, the first week of June 2018, and in it I mentioned all of the nations that we were at that time in conflict with. All through the war. I couldn't remember any of it any more than I could feel the corporate brotherhood at work among my breakfast flakes or in those protein shakes I drank to keep my strength up. I couldn't feel the toxicity the way I thought I should. Little silver pinpricks in my liver and then all over my body, steadily proceeding to a brownout in my limbic system, the not knowing when I was, if or where we were at war with, and for what reason now. All the time I stopped eating meat again. I stopped eating sugar. I bought 4 watches, each watch stopped. I bought a pound of raw, rough bulk lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and I couldn't stop my tongue from licking a certain piece of it like a dirty blue wedge of Toblerone to know how it would feel. As for time, I didn't always feel right with it, especially when alone, especially by the sea, where time widens to include more of itself, partly because of the motion and partly because of sound, which is also motion. A decade of drone strikes in the north couldn't stop Pakistani street vendors from salt roasting sweet corn in pans like steep-sided walks. My eyesight grew worrisome. I felt light tingling in my extremities and left cheek I imagined meant diabetes, but it turned out to be nothing. I turned out to be fine. Last week, an airstrike in Somalia
targeting an insurrectionist youth group, killed a dozen or so. Yesterday, they seized a village in the center of the country. After my father's surgery, I went to Ireland on my own. I told the lighthouse keeper I was worried something was wrong with me because I couldn't stop looking at the water with all its changing shapes and color. She said, "We are all the same here, love, all the same." Often in quiet, I can still feel the stone's abrasion on my tongue. I pulled a lichen from the Bronze Age megalith with intent to burn it back home. I made Syrian red pepper and walnut dip flavored with cumin and pomegranate molasses. There is nothing more delicious when eating this. How many seeds did Persephone take? I thought I could cry for my friend no further until I opened her armoire to lay to rest her scented shirts in an appliance box. White, off-white, shell pink, true pink, lilac, lavender, blue. As polar seas warm up, the shrinking difference in air pressure between the poles and the equator weakens the jet stream and makes its path wobblier, explaining all this erratic weather we've been up to. The Senate voted against the resolution to stop support of the Saudi intervention in Yemen as Trump took lunch with the Saudi crown prince. I wake with scratches I can't explain. I order herbal supplements at night online and forget what for by the time they get here. Ashwagandha, schizandra. I read objects are more like events with longevity. On average, 130 Yemeni children died each day last year of extreme hunger and disease. A Saudi blockade on seaports stops the ships delivering aid. These are casualties of war. The instant the technician's needle found a vein, the seascape on the wall rattled uncontrollably. She whispered the clinic used to be a funeral home. Trump showed the prince posters of the assorted planes, tanks, ships, and munitions his oily billions might buy him like an infomercial in the Oval Office. What use is an adaptogen when I worry my own daughter should soon prefer the hazards of an underworld to those of this and social media? I dropped a fossilized trilobite in the toilet and it cracked in half. Millions of years of structural integrity finished just like that. Without Persephone, it all froze over. No crops grew. It was almost the end of us, but Zeus, her father, pulled strings to get her back. This service won't reactivate. I have come to love catachresis because what's wrong with it is right. I like my heart with so much emptiness. There's room here in the dark for everything. War-related violence in Libya left 47 civilians dead this May. 38 men, 3 women, 4 boys, and 2 little girls to dust returneth. One version of the myth says Hecate leads Persephone to her mother with torches at the end of winter. Mother with torches at the end of winter. Some days I just sit back and watch things tear each other apart. It is winter on and off now through the end of spring. Emotion is everything and nothing. Same is true for structure. I said to my daughter on the phone, be an honest person. Just be an honest person. Be honest. Be honest. Be honest. Some days I can't believe what it means to be alive some days. Some days I think about tearing myself apart, but not exactly with pleasure. Some days I know the strongest feeling is grief, but I believe it must be love. It has to be, has to be, has to. Some days I feel each cell in my body has its fingers crossed. The endless. I saw a yellow butterfly flying, in my opinion, the wrong way, flying across the Sound to Connecticut. I saw a cormorant, oily looking, flying close to the sea's surface, precisely as I floated on it on my back in the attitude of the crucifixion. Minerals in my body, in conversation with the minerals of the sea. About the sun, how can I possibly add to what's already been said so well by the ancients, and said with an austerity I'll never know? It is an honor to take a back seat to the ancients. Who knew how? I was a fat white fish dissolving under the sold-out stadium sun like a god. But like a god, I could live through anything. And I'll read 2 new poems written this year. The first is called Weather Heard as Music. Tonight, this is an insomnia poem too. Just to give you a sense of what goes on when I can't sleep. Tonight, a great night wind blows hard against the building, as if we were at sea, as if we were at war, and I, some royal personage kept far from care, a softness among the battlements, gold-white worm floating with ease through the chemical air, solemn parade, a high-pitched ceiling painted blue, then decked in stars, a shame so many should have to pay for my effects, they never last. I must represent a thing of value. Don't go through with it, don't go through with it. But even now I can feel it is myself who slips away. And there is no great truth I stand for, no great meaning. It is only the wind. And there is no great truth I am serving, only details of the minor things that befall. Cake crumbs on the tabletop, rubble waiting to be poked through a little further before the froth of the wave comes to shuffle it off into the dark, indescribable deep, where I dissolves so unorchestratedly by the time it all unfolds into some new form of life it has long since washed ashore, like a family member, hovered over until recognized. And this one's called the Hierophant. Readers of the Tarot might know this figure. It's one of the major arcana, and the Hierophant, the word, as you probably know, means someone who interprets and reveals sacred mysteries. The Hierophant. True enough, but it can only be stated so many times before it starts losing its luster. And so it was in the early days the villagers used to set it to music to extend its shelf life, the way the old fishmonger packed his catch in salt or on ice chipped off from the face of the mountain. This was before the glacier disappeared completely, leaving behind in its wake a number of meltwater lakes, most of which burst through their banks in time, flooding the village and surrounding farmland. A few have kept intact, teeming with what appear to be trout, but when you look deeper into the lake's still surface, right knee-bent in the tufted watergrass, you will begin to make out tiny telltale differences. Where they came from remains a mystery, and you might devote your life to solving it, contending with herons and kingfishers known to feed here in season. Then one day a black bear takes you by surprise. Rearing on its haunches, majestic even in its hunger, it's easy to see why our ancestors worshipped them. But as the visits grow commonplace, the bear turns into a nuisance. If you do take on an assistant, it's only in the hope that a little youthful enthusiasm might liven things here in the final stretch, not out of any practical need related to the research, which you already completed earlier in the month, during the first of the brush fires. It's really just a matter of typing things up at this point, finishing touches on the diagrams and so forth. No special knowledge required. You can't offer much in terms of compensation, just a modest weekly stipend plus room and board. There's the studio apartment in the barn out back. After tidying up, sit for a minute on the corner of the bed in the pink copper glow of sunset through the window. The kind of contentment you promised yourself in the end won't come, or else it already came and went. But there is quiet in a sense that everything that will ever be asked of you has been asked. The villagers are gathering in the hall, waiting for you to dispel the mystery. But as you open your mouth to speak, a voice not yours takes off into song. Thank you.
You have to talk about your pace.
Yeah, because the first poem was not the same pace as all the other poems. Why? Talk about why you chose to do that way. That was cool.
I think that probably the second poem that I read was at a different pace, and I think that maybe they were all slightly different, if I'm remembering.
There's some,
Yeah.
variations.
Yeah, there are variations. I'm a Gemini. Maybe that's part of the explanation you want. Yeah. No, the poem that I wrote, the second poem that I read, it's a longer line poem, and it's a kind of a catalog poem, and it's a kind of poem that is one of those that just pushes forward. The second to last poem I read is something that's a little bit more sort of curated. It's almost got like a sonnet-like structure. It's got its argument and it's more compressed. And so I don't think to read that as fast makes as much sense, especially since The second poem is one of those poems where there's not a lot of internal punctuation in the lines, so it has some speed to it. You know, I mean, there's not a lot of commas and things that's going to make it very good time. The second poem I read, the third poem I read, has short lines, and so I kind of honor the length of the line by staggering the reading a little bit, and so forth.
But the first one was significantly pulled back, like
Okay.
significantly pulled back.
Pull back like.
Like at a pace that was very held back and restrained.
Okay, I think maybe I can account for that decision. I think that poem is something that I mean. There's something that I really do mean in that one, and I think that if I read it, yeah, I'll tell you something. Sometimes you can, when you're reading a poem, as you guys probably can contest or attest to this, you have to decide what are the things that you can get from this poem on the page that I'm going to privilege over other things. And sometimes you think, no one's gonna be able to follow the whole thread of this, so let me just sort of perform it in a way that has some of the feeling of the hysteria or the anxiety or the sort of fever pitch to it. Maybe that will communicate some of that affect of the poem. And I think that that's probably true of the second one. I wanted to privilege that feeling, so I read it a little bit more quickly. The first of the poems that I read, there's a kind of logic that's happening in the poem. I still like the way it sounds, but there's a kind of logic that I want to make followable because I think it maybe kind of is ultimately followable. So I would read that a little bit more slowly. And also, too, I don't want to talk anymore because this is what happens when you ask me a question. I feel like that poem, there's something about the way that the particular music of that poem is like a slow motion rain stick, and it kind of works like that. This is how a poet will answer a question. I know, but it's formal, it's structural, it's also feeling, and what feeling you think you might be able to deliver from the lectern, and so and then the last one I read, I feel like the pace of that poem reminds me something of the poem Directive by Robert Frost, and there's a certain kind of like let me give you like almost like a storyteller kind of voice that kind of leads you to a place you didn't anticipate. So I read that one.
Do not go gently.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a little bit differently. Yeah, there's your answer.
So, I have a question. Well, actually, I have two questions. The two of you referred to Greek mythology during your reading. I find that really interesting. Can you talk? I think all writers refer to different things and different archetypes, but how is it that we always come back to Greek mythology? Tell me how that works in your work.
I'm afraid of what I'll do. I'll do what I just did. Well, it's what we have. It's one of the ones that we have. There are other mythologies that I do like to make reference to too as well. I mean, like the Egyptian Book of the Dead is something that I really love. I love Mesoamerican myths as well. But the Greek, I think, is the one that we're oftentimes introduced to earliest. And it's so comprehensive, And I wear this thief hat because I think of Prometheus a lot. I love Prometheus and the sacrifice he made for us, even though a lot of people think of the Promethean view of life as being kind of a combustion, industrial kind of lifestyle that's gotten us to this position that we're in as far as like the health of the planet goes. But yes, and I read the Greek myths to my kids too, and the Norse ones too, which beyond the tree business, it didn't sink in as deeply. The Celtic ones too. Celtic ones are great too. Yeah.
We love the monsters. The monsters are so much better than ours. I feel like it's so much more gruesome
Than ours.
Yeah.
Because we claim the truth.
We really love the monsters, and especially like what I really loved is Loki has his monster wife. He also has his beautiful wife, and like I love that the doubling that often happens in mythology. But I teach my students too without trying to offend too much, saying the Bible is mythology. Like these are all mythologies, and they all tell us our origins.
Yeah.
And like if you look at all of these different mythologies beside one another, they all have their similarities. Everybody's got a flood story. Everybody has betrayal. Everybody like there are all these similarities between them, and you begin to see how the connective tissue between all the different cultures, and then also just the widely disparate things between the different cultures and the way that they vary on those stories. So, and that was just I don't know. It was picture books,
Yeah.
We were looking at those beautiful Dallaire illustrations. They're crazy
And there was a while too, in my workshops, I almost like let it be known I did not want to look at a Persephone poem, because like that's something that people go through a phase where they need to really write their Persephone poem. A lot of people. And I just got very tired of that. But then here I am, having written my own Persephone poem, because it made sense to me. I understood why people were doing that from within the impulse to write a Persephone poem. There is a period in maybe it's mostly girls' lives where that myth actually makes a lot of sense. And the grief of the parent over the loss of the child to darkness, it makes sense.
It's kind of the original coming of age.
Yeah, and some mistakes made along the way. Eating the pomegranate, don't do it. And not really delicious, by the way. I mean, not. It's got like wood inside.
So much
That's honest about that. That's a real problem. It's like a popsicle stick inside some delicious fruit.
Because popsicles aren't yum.
Yeah, but you don't eat the stick.
Who's you?
Who am I? You don't eat the stick. No,
Gnaw on the
that's
stick again?
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question is about politics.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, no, seriously, right? Well, when I was going to Columbia,
Yeah.
and Milda and I were there together, you really weren't supposed to mention politics. It was like, no,
Yeah,
do not do that.
It dates the work, what we were taught.
Yeah.
Of course, they're probably also not wanting us to write politics, so they didn't have to discuss it in class.
That's right.
But like politics and technology.
Well, for a while there, I think people were weirdly concerned that if you made reference to stuff that's ephemeral or of your time or prone to change, that would do this dating thing. But I mean, inevitably, poems that avoided doing that kind of seem like they're from that period anyway. Like there's this period during which people were just sort of, I mean, of course there was a New York school, and they were always including like daily, everyday things and political, and there's all other traditions that were sort of including that kind of stuff. But I think that there was a certain kind of academic MFA style writing or poem that was total. Yeah, this idea of pure poetry. And so, I mean, although maybe some of my favorite poets could be pointed to as practitioners of that particular kind of poetry, talking about like the certain high modernists, I don't really think that that's the right idea. I think that maybe part of my realization that wasn't the right idea came from my studying English academically. And so many of the most interesting classes were looking specifically at poems to find historical moments in there that were sort of like crucial to the composition of the poem that maybe weren't immediately available to other people. So this idea of having a poem have pockets of it that are dated actually became part of what was interesting about it, because it could then become a register or a barometer read of the environment, of the moment of its composition, not of some sort of like imagined ever that we should be aiming for, but actually of the life and of the time, which inevitably makes it infinitely more interesting.
So is
Right?
politics, like, do you guys agree? Do you guys include, how about you guys?
I could include politics. I probably would have failed at Columbia.
I mean, I don't try to necessarily write a political poem, but then when it's there, it's there. So I think there's a lot of it out there, and there's a lot of more avenues for it now, because people want to say something, and not want to be contained and have a voice about what's going on around them. And I think, to go with what you said, I think if you look at, past, eras when, writers write, it's like, if we're going to study the history, we got to study the politics, because that's what was going on when, they were writing. So I don't think they can be excluded from one another. I think, it shows like how they processed, what was going on around them, and how they felt about it. Not necessarily like your political, viewpoint, but just, how you interpreted it.
Yeah, and you can still reach for the absolute and eat Impossible burgers if you want. I mean, it's not one or the other. You can still have those other things that poetry seems to traditionally have wanted to do, but still not exclude, urgent political or social, or not the Impossible burgers and urgent political, matter. I don't know.
Nancy, I'm actually going to read 2 political poems.
Oh, God.
So we can discuss that too.
Yeah.
But what I would like to say about this is that,
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Finish.
So it's very interesting me, in graduate school and also just in general, what I've always felt was that politics and art were supposed to be separate because of a kind of anti-communist sensibility in the country. So that, I mean, there was plenty of political art before World War II in our country. And then I think it became much more.
Also in their country, like the communist countries, they used art
Right.
very strongly to be political dissidents. And
Exactly.
that was huge.
And so I think there was a big fear here that if you have anything political in your poem, what you're doing is propagandizing. And that therefore is like not art and it's also not good. Which is not, I mean, it's not true, right? I mean, politics are part of our life. Like, if I hear your second poem about the anxiety of living in a country where we're always at war, but we're not talking about it, was just absolutely spot on. For me, it really spoke to me about how I feel alive.
That is an excellent transition. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to turn off the live cast, but first we're going to say goodbye. Bye, live cast!
We still have one more reader.
Wait, I know, but we have to take a break,
Oh,
so we're just going to do this. So bye, love you, come.